Whereas it is provided by Section 63(1)(a) of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 15.01, the Act, that the Minister of Finance may, by an affirmative resolution of Parliament, borrow from a bank or other financial institution for capital or current expenditure. And whereas it is further provided by Section 64 of the Act that money borrowed by the government must be paid into and form part of the consolidated fund. And whereas the Minister of Finance considers it necessary, to borrow an amount of US dollars 9,971,000 from the special funds resources of the Caribbean Development Bank, the bank, Special Development Fund, to enhance the resilience of the Saint Lucia Fire Service, the loan. And whereas the loan is repayable in 92 equal or approximately equal and consecutive quarterly installments. And whereas the loan payments commence on the first day of January, the first day of April, and the first day of July, and the first day of October each year, after a grace period of 3 years, following the date of the loan, and such later date as the bank specifies in writing. And whereas interest is payable at a rate of 0.75% per annum on the amount of the loan disbursed, be it resolved that Parliament authorizes the Minister for Finance to borrow an amount of US dollars 9,971,000 from the special funds resources of the bank's Special Development Fund to enhance the resilience of the Saint Lucia Fire Service. The loan is repayable in 92 equal, approximately equal and consecutive quarterly installments. The loan payments commence on the first day of January, the first day of April, the first day of July, the first day of October of each year after a grace period of 3 years, following the date of the loan or such later date as the bank specifies in writing. Interest is payable at a rate of 0.7% per annum on the amount of the loan disbursed and outstanding. Mr. Speaker, before I make my contribution, I'd like to congratulate the Saint Lucia Civil Service, the Civil Service of Saint Lucia. Tomorrow is October the 4th, is Civil Service Solidarity Day, and we know the civil servants play an important part, public servants, in the economy and the management of the country. So I'd like to wish them a successful Solidarity Day on the October the 4th, and also invite members of Cabinet and the international public to a panel discussion on the 3rd of October on solidarity in the civil services. Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased this morning to keep a promise of the Saint Lucia Labour Party to enhance and improve conditions of the Saint Lucia Fire Service in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the fire service has gone through some trying times, Mr. Speaker. And most of us sometimes don't understand the work that these men and women do for the country, Mr. Speaker. We take it for granted, and we do not always show the level of appreciation for the men and women of the Saint Lucia Fire Service, Mr. Speaker. I had the benefit of a discussion with the fire service during a time in another life when I was acting Prime Minister. I had a discussion with the representatives of the association, and they told me firsthand that the trauma and the work and the effort and the ordeal that they went through as fire people. And that was before COVID. That was long before COVID, Mr. Speaker. So you can imagine what they went through during COVID. And I want to put on record again the appreciation of the government of the cabinet and the government of Saint Lucia, and on behalf of the people of Saint Lucia, Mr. Speaker, our sincere gratitude to the men and women of the Saint Lucia Fire Service for the work that they do in Saint Lucia for the people of Saint Lucia. Mr. Speaker, this motion came about by letter dated March 17, 2023. By letter dated March 17, 2023. The government of Saint Lucia, through the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, requested support to develop a resilience building project to assist in the strengthening the capacity of the Saint Lucia Fire Service, to improve emergency response, make it more effective and more efficient. This was necessary to reduce the vulnerability of the population to increasing disaster risks triggered by human action and hazard events, including stronger tropical cyclones, hurricanes and storms, storm surges, and drought events which threaten St. Lucia's socio and economic objectives, Mr. Speaker. Not to mention pandemics, which happened with the COVID situation when we experienced the COVID pandemic, Mr. Speaker, and the work of the fire service, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the expected outcome of the project is to enhance the capacity of the Saint Lucia Fire Service, to expand and improve emergency response services, to reduce disaster risk across Saint Lucia in rural, urban, and suburban communities, to improve gender responsiveness of human resource management and resilience of human capital in the Department of Home Affairs, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, today I want to announce that very soon the government of Saint Lucia will be waiving all ambulance fees for the people of Saint Lucia. This is part of the work. This is about the benefits of the health and security levy, Mr. Speaker. And we will account to the people of Saint Lucia, not in a black box, but we will tell them, Mr. Speaker, how the health and security levy is being spent. Only this morning, we increased resources to the Saint Lucia police force, and the health and security levy will be used for training, for effectiveness of the police force, Mr. Speaker. So we will account for the health and security levy. We will not put it in a black box that has never been found. Mr. Speaker, the project will be as follows, Mr. Speaker. First of all, project preparation. The Saint Lucia Fire Service has provided architectural and structural drawings for the design and rehabilitation of the Saint Lucia Fire Service Training School in Vieux-Fort. So we are going to improve, Mr. Speaker, the situation at the Saint Lucia Fire Service in Vieux-Fort, Mr. Speaker, and the Saint Lucia Fire Service training facility. And that was used when the RSS came to Saint Lucia. That's multifunctions. It was used when the RSS came to Saint Lucia. They were housed at the training school in Vieux-Fort, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the money will be used for 2 parcels of land owned by Invest St. Lucia in Vieux-Fort, being one 24,500 square foot concrete warehouse with galvanized cladding situated at the Vieux-Fort Industrial Zone. That's where it is now, Mr. Speaker, and the land registered in that name, in the name of Invest St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. That's what the money is going to be used for. It's going to be used, Mr. Speaker, for infrastructure works, for the reconfiguration and retrofitting of the Saint Lucia Fire Service Training Center and the practical training grounds to satisfy TVET standards and to facilitate expanded and specialized training programs for the Saint Lucia Fire Service, the Royal Saint Lucia Police Force, and the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, and the Regional Security System, Mr. Speaker. The money is going to be used for engineering and construction-related services and consultancy services to provide design and construction supervision of the infrastructure works being done at the Saint Lucia Fire Service Training School, Mr. Speaker. It's not only going to be used for infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, it's going to be used for the provision of appliances as follows: 1 aerodrome truck, 5 domestic fire trucks, 4 quick response vehicles, QRVs, 4 ambulances, and equipment tools for 9 fire stations, including 7 local stations and 2 crash fire halls at George F. Charles Airport and Iwano International Airport, and information communication technology equipment and furniture for the Saint Lucia Fire Service Training School. And Mr. Speaker, I want to speak, please allow me a few moments, Mr. Speaker, to deal with the situation at the aerodrome, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, you know, sometimes it's painful when you have people who never performed, who did not perform, who were given the opportunity by the people of Saint Lucia to perform, but they did not perform. They refused to perform. They neglected the most important things that would keep the economy of Saint Lucia going, that would benefit the people of Saint Lucia, Mr. Speaker. And now, when they are rejected by the people, they refuse to come to Parliament, and when they're out of Parliament, they speak. I wouldn't say that. Mr. Speaker, do you know, Mr. Speaker, the effective operation of the aerodrome, that's the airport, is a critical requirement of the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. And non-compliance increases the risk of sanction, including suspension of the airport's license to operate, with possible knock-on effects on the airport's reputation, reduced revenue for the entity, and the complete breakdown in the tourism industry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at present, the aerodrome truck stationed at George F. Charles Airport and the appliances, the fire trucks at the headquarters and in Grozile, some of them are in excess of 20 years old and are operating well beyond their design life of 15 years. In their current state, they require frequent servicing and repairs, which have increased response times to emergency calls from citizens, Mr. Speaker. The frequent failures increase downtime and continue to place inordinate pressure on other fire stations as they are pressed into action to provide supplemental support to fire trucks that experience mechanical failures whilst responding to emergency calls. This results in inefficiencies that potentially increases the incidence of loss of life of assets, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the continuation of this dire situation is contrary to the policy decision to treat citizens' security as a priority, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, that loan will be used to provide a new aerodrome truck for the Saint Lucia Fire Service to operate at the airports in Saint Lucia, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the fire service is not only about equipment, it's about men and women, Mr. Speaker. So the fire service, the personnel of the fire service, they have to always receive training, and the organization needs institutional support. Part of that money will be used for the development of a gender policy and action plan through the Ministry of Home Affairs, Mr. Speaker. It will be used for mental health and psychosocial support program for firefighters in the Saint Lucia Fire Service. And Mr. Speaker, psychosocial support is extremely important for members of the fire service because of the trauma that they see. Anytime there's an accident, you call them, the trauma. They see the gunshots, the pain, the suffering, Mr. Speaker, that these men and women undergo. So they need psychosocial support, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the government is strengthening its psychosocial support to the citizens of Saint Lucia because the cabinet has approved the appointment of a psychosocial officer to be housed at the Ministry of Justice, Mr. Speaker, once the Public Service Commission agrees. That's important, Mr. Speaker. That is very important, Mr. Speaker. Once the Public Service Commission agrees, because many people believe that the Prime Minister can instruct the Public Service Commission. This present Public Service Commission ensures that the Prime Minister does not instruct it. And Mr. Speaker, it's very important because many of the delays in the system, Mr. Speaker, which we as policymakers are suffering, are way beyond our control, Mr. Speaker. Way beyond our control. But we obey, and the Cabinet of Ministers, we obey the law, and we have the patience that is necessary. So we hope that the psychosocial support that we are asking for the Ministry of Justice, in the Ministry of Justice, Mr. Speaker, we hope that that support is given because it is necessary, it is required, and it's part of the government's policy, the approach to combat crime and deviance in this country, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the money is also going to be used for the development of a maintenance action plan for 9 fire stations and training to execute the plan. The development of an operational manual to guide fire chiefs and officers to improve overall operations of the Saint Lucia Fire Service. The development of a sustainability management plan, which will provide guidelines to improve waste management processes for the Saint Lucia Fire Service, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the money will also be used for capacity building, technical training for at least 329 fire officers at this time, Mr. Speaker. And the numbers have increased. Now I think it's about 340, which comprises of 270 males and 70 females, Mr. Speaker. And I'm very pleased to say, Mr. Speaker, that men are the majority of fire service are men. They're represented in the frontline fighting, Mr. Speaker. But there are 11 women who are supervisors at the mid-management level, Mr. Speaker. So there's gender balance. Minister of Home Affairs. She says, not yet. Mr. Speaker, and the Saint Lucia Fire Service is an equal opportunity employer. And Mr. Speaker, so part of the funds, at least 230,000, will be used for gender policy and action plan, Mr. Speaker, for the Saint Lucia Fire Service, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the money is going to be used for capacity building. I said technical training in the appropriate use of fire appliances, including quick response vehicles, the use of the quick response vehicles, Mr. Speaker, to avoid accidents, to respond in an efficient manner, to improve their skills, Mr. Speaker, in driving these vehicles, Mr. Speaker. It is also quick response vehicles, the air-drum truck, how to operate it, breathing apparatus, and maintenance service level training for 8 maintenance staff mechanics at all fire stations, Mr. Speaker. It will also involve training for IT staff and to deliver at least TVET level 2 to 3 certification in firefighting. So we are producing global firefighters, Mr. Speaker, that they can use their skill to work anywhere. But we hope they remain in Saint Lucia, Mr. Speaker, to work to give their service to Saint Lucia, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the CDB Board of Directors approved the loan on June 18th, 2023. June 18th, 2023. The loan was approved by the Board of Directors, Mr. Speaker, for an amount of $9,971,000 from the Caribbean Development Bank's Special Funds Reserve and a grant to the government of Saint Lucia. The bank saw how necessary that was it. How that intervention was. And it gave a grant of $230,500 US from the CDB Special Funds Resources on the CDB standard terms and conditions and on terms and conditions precedent as set out on this appraisal report. And I'm going to outline to you the conditions precedent, Mr. Speaker, that caused us to have this loan. Mr. Speaker, it's not a situation where we haven't got to report and we haven't got to follow processes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the board also approved a waiver of the CDB's procurement guidelines for projects financed by the CDB. They caused a waiver of the procurement guidelines to extend eligibility of bidders for the contract of bidders for the aerodrome, the fire truck, the ambulance, the firefighting, the foam equipment, and the appliances to countries not members of the CDB. So there's going to be a tender process, Mr. Speaker, and the tender process, the CDB has waived the requirement so everybody can tender, so we can get the better price or the best price for the appliances, Mr. Speaker. The total value of the waiver, the total value of the equipment that we are going to buy, out of the $9 million, the total value of the equipment is $7,370,736 US. That is the value of the aerodrome and fire truck, the ambulances, the firefighting foam, the equipment and appliances. That is going to be at a value of $7,370,000, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the project will be implemented within a period of 30 months. 30 months from the date of approval, and is scheduled to be completed by December 2025. By December 2025, Mr. Speaker, the fire service should be a top-line global fire service, Mr. Speaker, in the aspects that I mentioned. Technical specifications, I must thank the management of the fire service for doing that. For all the equipment and appliances have been prepared. The issuance of tenders for goods and related services is scheduled for Q3 of 2023. It will happen now, Mr. Speaker. A tender for goods and related services, Mr. Speaker. Architectural and structural drawings have been prepared, which provide good details of the proposed layout of the Saint Lucia Fire Service Training School in Vieux-Fort. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of Economic Development, Mr. Speaker, will be the implementing agency for the project through a project coordinating unit under the supervision of the Ministry for Home Affairs, Mr. Speaker, and the Ministry of National Security. Mr. Speaker, sometimes there is not confusion, but people don't really understand the distinction between the Ministry of Home Affairs and Ministry of National Security. But hopefully that will be cleared shortly. But the Ministry of Home Affairs, Mr. Speaker, is the implementing agency for the fire service. The Ministry of Home Affairs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are conditions precedent to the first disbursement. First of all, the bank shall not be obliged to make the first disbursement of the loan until the borrower has furnished or caused to be furnished to the bank evidence acceptable to the bank that the following conditions have been satisfied. 1, it has obtained prior approval from Parliament for the loan. That's what we're doing this morning. Prior approval from Parliament. 2, the project coordinator is engaged. 3, the PCU has been established with composition and functions acceptable to the bank. 4, the procurement officer has been assigned from within the Ministry of Home Affairs with qualifications and experience acceptable to the bank. And finally, the project steering committee has been established. So, Minister of Home Affairs, you have your instructions on these conditions precedent, so you can move as quickly as possible to relieve these men and women in the fire service, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the members for supporting the motion, Mr. Speaker. I think it's worthwhile. I think the fire service, it shows all members of the fire service must have heard how the government thinks about them. Again, we want to thank them again. And what's important is the loan is at 0.75%, which is a moderate interest rate, Mr. Speaker. And the health and security levy will be used to pay that loan. I will not tell you it's in the black box, but I will tell you a lockbox, neither black box or lockbox, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we've heard so many times about a lockbox. Not one person can tell me where is that lockbox. I've been Minister of Finance from July 2021, Mr. Speaker, and I've asked every official in the Ministry of Finance, please show me the lockbox. Where is the fuel levy increased by 150, introduced by the former Minister of Finance? Where is that lockbox, where that money is? And no one can tell me, Mr. Speaker. The health and security levy will go into the consolidated fund for use by the government of Saint Lucia in health and security. And that is the challenge, Mr. Speaker, because this talk, Mr. Speaker, we have been very quiet. We have allowed all sorts of things to be said, all sorts of misinformation, all sorts of what do you call it? What does this have? What do you call it? Town hall meetings, Mr. Speaker. Well, things that are outrageous, and we've stayed quiet and we stayed focused. We are going to remain focused, but we no longer are going to remain quiet. Because if you repeat a lie long enough, people are going to listen to the lie. That was the key to Gorbachev. To Goebbels. The Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, Goebbels, Mr. Speaker. He said that if you repeat a lie long enough, Mr. Speaker, people will believe that lie. So the lie was we put a health and security levy on charcoal. That was and they continued with that. They continued, but they are the ones who put a tax on charcoal. They are the ones which we rejected, Mr. Speaker. But they continue. You put a tax on charcoal, Mr. Speaker. So these lies are becoming more persistent and more consistent. And we took the position that we are going to remain focused and forget it. But right now, Mr. Speaker, I'm putting the balance of misinformation on notice that we are going to be responding to these lies. We are going to be responding to this misinformation because the people of Saint Lucia deserve better, Mr. Speaker. And this is why we are improving the conditions with the fire service, because the people deserve better. This is why we are improving the conditions with the police service, because the people deserve better, Mr. Speaker. This is why we paid the teachers, all of them, temporary employment, $600 increase in the materials allowance, because the people deserve better. And this is why we said in government, in opposition, that if you were in government, we would have paid the people who suffer from COVID $1,500 each. And in November this year, we are going to pay nearly 5,000 of these people $1,500 each, Mr. Speaker. And I want them to replay the tape. Replay it. Replay the tape. When you accuse people, and you accuse people unjustly, the good Lord has a way of making it come back, Mr. Speaker. And my friends in theology will tell me, it's a quote, Mr. Speaker, about lies and misinformation, Mr. Speaker. I never said that we would pay everybody $1,500. I never said so. And my colleague from the Central Cash played the tape. I said, if you were in government, and the point, Mr. Speaker, that money was never government's money. That was NIC money that they borrowed. The government had no surpluses. Saint Lucia had no surpluses during COVID. The government was already near bankrupt in 2019, near COVID. There were no surpluses. Talk about managing the economy. The government of Grenada had surpluses. The government of Dominic had surpluses. The government of St. Vincent had surpluses. The government of Barbados had surpluses on the primary account. Saint Lucia government was in deficit because of mismanagement of the economy. So they could not pay anything during COVID. They borrowed nearly $300 million during COVID. And they went to the NIC for nearly $40 million, which this government is considering paying back the people of Saint Lucia for the NIC money. We had to come to this parliament and let's get a history down, because you know there's been a lot of talk and nonsense about managing the economy, managing, Mr. Speaker. And we are going now to put it on the record. Put it on the record, Mr. Speaker. There was no money in the government's coffers to do anything for COVID. They had to borrow almost every cent. And when they were borrowing, I said, if you were in government, the $500 was not enough. We would give $1,500. And we came into office, went to the Caribbean Development Bank, spoke to them, and we are saying, because of what they left us, we are going to be giving nearly 5,000 people $1,500 each for COVID response. So, Mr. Speaker, we are going now to give the true story of how the United Workers' Party left this country. Because we've kept quiet about it. We've been very quiet. We've listened to them all the town hall meetings, all sorts of nonsense. I create the weather. I make it very hot. You think somebody can say that, Mr. Speaker? You think somebody can go on a platform and say the Consolidated Fund has a Section 3? Mr. Speaker, this is the Public Finance Management Act. Look at it. I didn't bring it in my other briefcase. The Public Finance Management, I'll bring this up for Mr. Speaker. The Public Finance Management, there is nothing in the Public Finance Management Act that says anything about Part 3. But the leader of the opposition can go in loud, can go to the public of Saint Lucia and say there's a Part 3 in the Public Finance Management Act. To justify what he knew he shouldn't have done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so from now on, we are putting them on notice. We are now going to rebut the lies. We are now going to rebut the misinformation from all circles, Mr. Speaker, everywhere. And our story, Mr. Speaker, I understand that they intend to come differently. Mr. Speaker, you cannot come differently when history is against you. You cannot come differently when your words will be used against you. You cannot come differently when how you treated the people of Saint Lucia. When you said that the patrimony is the credit card. You can't come differently. So we're waiting for a different approach, Mr. Speaker. We're ready. You know, Mr. Speaker, they have always underestimated this government. But right now, Mr. Speaker, you see, we wanted to stabilize the economy. We want to stabilize the economy. And next week, I'm going to be making a statement on the level of Saint Lucia's creditworthiness as has been analyzed by an international, by a regional institution. I'm going to make that statement in the House. So we will hear who managed the economy better. And we're also going to have the 6-month review of the economy. Never happened before. We're going to do it in the House, Mr. Speaker. Because right now, Mr. Speaker, we believe that we are at the point where we can take time to rebut the lies and misinformation. We stabilize the economy. We're in the process of stabilizing it, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the government accounts, Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't even tell you, we are stabilizing the economy. Right now, we are having discussions with public servants, Mr. Speaker. And I hope these discussions happen swiftly and fairly, because this government has shown its commitment to the public services of Saint Lucia. We paid the civil servants their back pay. Even pensioners, Mr. Speaker, pensioners, Mr. Speaker, we are going, November, we are going to give pensioners their one-off monthly payment, one-off annual payment, Mr. Speaker. And we promise them that there's going to be a review in the pensions for the pensioners of this country, the government pensioners. The NIC pensioners were given a 4% increase, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, sometimes I say to my colleagues, let us compare the first 2 years of United Workers' Party rule between 2016 and 2018, before COVID. Before COVID. Let us compare it. And let's compare between 2021 and 2023 of Saint Lucia Labour Party rule. Let us compare it, Mr. Speaker, and let us see who has done more for this country. Let us see who has managed this economy better. Who has brought more investment in this country, Mr. Speaker? Let us see, factually. But, Mr. Speaker, this time will come, and I'm putting on notice, Mr. Speaker, that the government will not allow these lies and that misinformation to continue. We are going to be responding. We are going to respond, Mr. Speaker, in a truthful manner, Mr. Speaker. Because as we continue to build St. Jude Hospital, more will come out. You see St. Jude Hospital, Mr. Speaker? I will invite you, Mr. Speaker, because right now I see a light. You see St. Jude? I've seen a light, Mr. Speaker. St. Jude is progressing in a way that lightens my heart. Many things worry me, Mr. Speaker, but you see St. Jude, when this glorious day will come, when we, in our numbers, will march to St. Jude, to march to St. Jude, Mr. Speaker, Amen. Not to demonstrate, but to open St. Jude for the people of Saint Lucia. That day, Mr. Speaker, that day is coming soon. That day is coming soon, Mr. Speaker. You know, and whether they like it or not, whether they demonstrate or not, whether they lie or not, we are going to preserve the box for future use, and we are going to open St. Jude Hospital for the people of St. Lucia and maintain it with the health and security levy. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.